For the Muslims, for them, there's certain things which they just don't understand how a person cannot keep to his religion. So they know about kosher food, they know about Shabbat, for example, and these are things. So I tell these managers and CEOs of these big companies, no meetings on Shabbat. You got to tell them you want kosher food. And in the middle of the meeting, tell them you got to go out to pray mincha. But they tell me, we don't know how to pray. I said, doesn't matter. You go out, speak to God. You don't know anybody who has a problem, somebody who's in the hospital. You don't just talk to God, have a conversation. And show them that, you're going out to pray, and this will make, your stock price go up in their eyes.
Welcome back to Inspiration for the Nation. And in this episode, Rabbi Yaakov Herzog pulls back the curtains on unexpected relationships with Muslim leaders in Saudi Arabia, the shocking truth about Jewish life in the heart of the Islamic world, and why everything you think you know about Jewish-Muslim relations might be wrong. Thanks to our four wonderful sponsors, BitBean, Hiring for Less, PZ Deals, and Wheels to Lease. This episode is in loving memory of Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe and Shimon David ben Yaakov Shleima. My one request is this: if you enjoyed this episode, please don't keep it to yourself. Hit the share button and send it to someone you care about, a loved one, your family chat, or a friend who needs to hear this. One share could change the way they see the world, and sharing good things is a mitzvah. Here we go. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Thank you, Rabbi Herzog, for taking the time to do this. And I want to talk about a lot of the activities that you're busy with right now. But before then, I'd love to get a little more knowledge about your background. So where did you grow up? And then lead us through how you got to where you are today.
I was born in New York City, in Manhattan, in Greenwich Village to be specific. I grew up in the village until the age of 12. I attended the Mesivta Teferes Yerushalayim MTJ elementary school. That's Rabbi Moshe Feinstein Zechrono Livracha's elementary school in Yeshiva. And at the age of 12, I came to Israel. Life in the city was very, I don't have to explain that much. It's an interesting place. The village in the 80s, Manhattan at that time as well, the roaring 80s. So basically, I came from one very interesting city to another interesting city in Jerusalem, but basically, really was disconnected from my past, because back then we didn't have video conferencing and WhatsApp and stuff like that. Making a phone call from Israel to our relatives in the United States seems like it was a big expense back in the day. So it was really disconnecting from friends and my past, and coming to a new place where I really didn't speak the language. Hebrew, but the city really was intriguing. Everything, from the Machne Yehuda market, that back then it was a real market. Today it's very touristy and trendy, but then it was, a real down-to-earth market. The old city, very intriguing. And then I realized that in the old city you have parts that are Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Armenian. And, coming from the background that I came from, I was very curious. I wanted to discover, I wanted to learn. And I, spent many hours and many days wandering around different places in Jerusalem. The Muslim Quarter, a lot of time over there as well. And as I was learning Hebrew, I was also, starting to understand what was happening here. At the age of 13, when I finally had a fluent Hebrew, I realized that nobody around me really spoke Arabic, and nobody knows what they're saying, what, the call of prayer, what's going on over there, and what's being said during the speech, the khutbah, the sermon that's given in the mosque, over, the microphone that everybody hears outside. Nobody really knows how they think. Nobody knows their culture. For me, it was very strange. Like, you don't care. And at the time, it was the beginning of the first Intifada. So, I believe you have to understand who you're dealing with, know them, how their operating system works. And that just encouraged me to start learning the language, learning the mentality, and to ask questions and to spend more time over there. And that's what I did, in between, when I had free time from school and then high school. I went to the Sanhedrin school on Yirmiyahu Street in Jerusalem for 2 years. And then I went to Yeshiva High School in Kiryat Arba. During my spare time, I kept on, brushing up on my Arabic. I finished Bagrut in English pretty early. So I had 2 years of free time in language instruction. So I utilized that for more language instruction. And then, I was reading books about the Middle East, about Islam. And after the army and being in yeshiva, I realized that most of the Western world doesn't really understand what's going on in the Muslim world, even though you have a lot of people that may be very learned, scholars, but they really don't understand the fundamentals, and they don't want to understand the fundamentals. They're looking at it from a Western perspective, and they think that everybody else, these Western values are going to work all over the world, and it's just not that, because you're dealing with people that have a different mentality when it comes to government, how they're being controlled, what they want. In the West, everybody wants freedom. And in North Africa and the Middle East, that's not something which is, even a topic that people are speaking about. So I chucked out most of the literature that I had on the Middle East and the Muslim world. And I was a firm believer of, being boots on the ground. So from the age, like I said, in Jerusalem, at the age of 14, I knew the old city like the palm of my hand, every alleyway, every store, Silwan for that matter, and then gradually, going to Hebron, Nablus, other cities. On the other hand, it started becoming much more complicated, especially during the Oslo Accords when the Palestinian Authority and Mahshimam took over. But I managed to get a good grasp of the mentality, what their take on many issues are, to lay the groundwork for a pretty good network, which I have until today, not only in Israel, but all over in Jordan, Egypt, the Gulf, Malaysia, Indonesia. And these are places, that I've been to, spent a lot of time there. Malaysia, Indonesia, been there many times. Iran, I was there about 3 years ago. So all of these places I've been to, met the people, felt the place. People know me, I know them. But my main focus currently in the past 4 years has been the Jewish community in Saudi Arabia. I don't want to bring more Jews to Saudi Arabia. That's not my goal. My goal is to help the Jews that are there in Saudi Arabia and to make a good connection with the local community of Saudis, because you have many people that come there for work, especially in the past couple of years, the past decade. There's been a lot of growth. People from many different sectors, banking, medicine, teachers, diplomats, come there to live anywhere from 6 months to many years. And I want to give them the opportunity to have a full Jewish life. And in the past 5 years, you have many more tourists coming. If it's people who are coming for short business visits, a lot of conventions. So I want them to have a solution for Yiddishkeit and that. But I'm not encouraging people to come. I don't want to, encourage people to relocate to Saudi Arabia. That's not my issue. If a person doesn't know where to live, I'm not trying to pitch them to come live in Saudi Arabia. If they have a good opportunity, to work there, there are a lot of opportunities. And we're preparing the place for Mashiach. That's, spreading the knowledge of the 7 Noahide laws, Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, which, if we have to be a light to the nations, that's part of our role. Anywhere we go in the world, as Jews, we have to spread these 7 Noahide laws and the practicality, what it means. For example, animal welfare, the derivatives. What does it mean? The oneness of God, how to bring them the oneness of God, and all the other aspects of the Sheva Mitzvot. So I have Baruch Hashem of nine children.
What does your wife say about all of this? Is she on board? Is she thinking something else?
That's a good question. When I first came to her with the idea of Saudi Arabia, I remember it, like it was just yesterday, where I told her about this new city that's being built in Saudi Arabia. And they're bringing the best and the brightest from around the world, which means they're also going to have plenty of Jewish people there. What do you think about going to Saudi Arabia and serving the community there? And she looked at me, and there was like silence in the room that you could cut with a knife. Like cut through it like a cake. And I was like waiting for her answer. And she said, if you think that there's something tangible over there, develop it. But don't forget everything else. Don't, just go berserk on this and forget about our family, what you're occupied with now. And when you have a place that we could call a home over there, gather a community, then I'm on board. We'll come. Now, I was pretty surprised myself, but thank God she's on board.
It's interesting because, as long as time has gone on, there's been obvious conflict between the Muslims and the Jewish world. And at the same time, though, there has been always times and periods where there's been friendship and there has been peace. And what we're seeing now is kind of like the amplification of both. We're seeing a lot of obviously fighting going on, but we're also seeing, take, for example, the Abraham Accords and what's been happening in the UAE, a lot of friendship. What do you say about that from your experience in looking into more from the, Arabic and Muslim culture?
Well, we have over 1,400 years of history to look at on the relationship between the Jewish people and the Muslim communities. It's interesting that in all the Muslim countries, Sunni and Shia, there were thriving Jewish communities up until the foundation of the State of Israel. Some places had more problems than others, but all in all, they were much better off than Europe. If it was Morocco, Tunisia, even Iraq, when everything overflowed in 1948, over the hundreds of years that they were there, they had their ups and downs with the communities. But I think that in most places, the Muslim communities understood the importance of getting along, and it was easy to get along because the Jewish people, the oneness of God, Achdus Havaya, is something which is the basis of our religion, of Yiddishkeit. And for them, it's also a pillar. So there wasn't that much room for fighting, like, let's say, Muslims and Christians, for example. I think there were different periods in time where if 1,400 years ago, when the community in Haibar, you could say the first clashes with the Muslim communities, it was around different treaties, breaking the treaties. And that's where basically there was a mentality clash. One side didn't understand the other side. The Jews didn't understand who they were really dealing with because they were straight shooters and they made deals. And in one case, you even had a rabbi in Saudi Arabia that was killed on Shabbat because he went out and fought with Muhammad, we had a treaty with. His community didn't want to come out because they said it's Shabbat. And I said, it's not Pikuach Nefesh, and we're not going to go out. And he fought. His name was Rabbi Mochairak, and he's buried with the fighters in the city of Medina. It's a big place. Any Muslim scholar could tell you about the story, Rabbi Mochairak. And Muhammad said about him that he's the best of the Jews. So from there, we had many ups and downs in the relationships between Muslims and Jews. The first Muslim endowment, the Waqf, was established by Rabbi Mochairak. He basically taught them what a trust is, an endowment fund. And until this day, his land and everything is a trust. And everything that's grown on that goes to charity. And they protect it until this day. And even in Jerusalem, when you have a Waqf on the Temple Mount, it's from Rabbi Mochairak, who introduced this term into the Muslim world of a trust. North Africa, Shias in Iran, for example, they had their ups and downs. But all in all, it was pretty good until the establishment of the State of Israel. Then here in Israel, things were pretty interesting from 1948 till 67. Basically, half of the country was under Jordanian control. And after 1967, a lot of them wanted to run away. But Moshe Dayan asked them to stay. And that's where we really got into a problem because the Ashkenazi leaders didn't know how to deal with the people who they wanted to stay here in Israel. And now in most Muslim communities in Israel, there's a lot of crime. There are hundreds of murders a year within their communities here in Israel. And that's a combination of not understanding how to deal with them, how their social justice systems work within their society, and how it works along with sovereign state of Israel, and a lack of enforcement from the side of Israel in those communities, which led to a lot of crime. A lot of it started from a sort of religious, cultural aspect, but now in a lot of areas, for example, in North Israel, it's mainly crime. And the South, their social justice system sort of still has arms and legs, but in the North, it's a lot of crime. And then you have the communities that are more in the mainstream of society, but they're pretty much on the sidelines. So it's a very tough situation here in Israel. It could explode any second into a lot of violence. These are people who are citizens of the state of Israel, and they could come in and out. And we saw, just about 4 years ago in Shomel Chomot, what happened in different mixed communities where there was a lot of violence. And that was just, a warm up of what potentially could happen. Because for the past decade, everybody who's in this business knows that there are 400,000 weapons up north. And weapons, I'm not talking about pistols. It's everything from rifles and heavier than that. That's 400,000. So when you hear that last night they caught somebody and they confiscated 17 guns, that's nothing. We have 400,000 weapons that the system knows about, and that's just up north. We're not talking about East Jerusalem, down south, Judea and Samaria. So this is something which it's a boiling pot. It could boil over any second. We have communities that are borderlining with these cities, Tulkarem, Netanya. You have Kalkilia next to Kfar Saba. You have Jenin and Afula. These are places where there is a wall, but a wall could come down very quickly and people could jump over this wall. Just understand, when you're on highway number 6 in Israel, Kalkilia and Tulkarem are on that road. The last houses of Kalkilia are on road number 6, which is a major artery and strategic road in Israel, which could be taken over in seconds, not to mention the other road going up north from Tel Aviv. You have cities which are on that place. So the situation is very sensitive. I don't know if Israel is in denial or they just don't have the manpower to deal with it right now due to the different, I would say, Israel has 7 or 8 theaters of operation right now. If you take Gaza, Judea, Samaria, Iran. So this is another theater which has to be dealt with within the broad picture of what's going on now in Israel.
We'll be right back to this week's episode of Inspiration for the Nation. What, you were expecting Yaakov? I'm doing an ad read with Yaakov. So I want to tell you about BitBean. Yaakov, you ready for a short interview?
Yeah, please.
How are you, by the way?
I'm good.
How is this episode going?
I think it's good. You started off very excited, so I hope it's not like a very sad episode.
No. Oh, whoops. Okay, so I have a somber message for you. No, there are a lot of businesses out there that are spending a boatload of money. I promise you. Don't get me wrong. They're making money, but their back-end systems are very antiquated. That means they're old, like me. Unlike you. Yaakov always tells me I'm old. Anywho, there's BitBean, right? BitBean will sit down with your company to figure out the processes that you have in place as it relates to software. So you could be a logistics company, right? And you manage your warehouse with some antiquated technology, but the different systems aren't talking to each other. Or, get this, you have payroll. You have 4 people because back in 2006, you had 4 people doing it. So you always had 4 people, but you don't realize, I'm doing a lot of the talking, which I like. You don't realize that those 4 people can be turned into 1 person with the benefit of technology. Get where I'm going with this?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So BitBean, what they do is they sit down with you and your team, understand your processes, and say, hey, by the way, software can help you with 3 of the 4 things that you're doing, and you can save this money with a one-time investment. No brainer.
But someone listening is like, oh, that's only for huge, crazy, big companies that could handle it.
I wouldn't say only. I'm not saying if you're a one-person shop that you need to be having a sit down with them. Maybe yes, maybe no. But medium to bigger sized companies should definitely be doing some level of conversation. What I like, they'll be transparent. If they feel that they can't help you, they're not going to give you a proposal, which I think is very beneficial. You have a link on the bottom where it shows the website. So we're going to put a link in the show notes, bitbean.com.
Yeah.
And there might be even a QR code to the side. You can scan it if you're using a smart TV. But I don't want to talk too long. Let's get back to the episode and let's talk offline.
Okay. We'll be right back to this week's episode. But first, for over 35 years, Wheels to Lease has been revolutionizing the car buying experience. No high-pressure sales, no hidden fees, and no last-minute surprises. Just honest, upfront pricing and a seamless, stress-free process delivered straight to your door. Whether you're looking to buy, finance, or lease a new or used vehicle, they offer best deals on any make and model, anytime. Their white glove service means you can complete everything over the phone. No showroom visits and no wasted time. We've all experienced waiting in a back office, and this is not the experience at all. Just tell them what you need, and they'll handle all the details from choosing a vehicle to door-to-door delivery so you can drive off with exactly what you want, hassle-free. And Wheels to Lease takes pride in integrity, fairness, and making customers happy. Don't waste time. Call them today and see why families have trusted them for decades. You could call or text 718-871-8715. That's 718-871-8715, or send an email to inspire@wheelstolease.com. Or you can go to wheelstolease.com/inspire, and they'll be sure to take care of you. You can also simply tap the link in the show notes and WhatsApp Sal to take care of you. So go ahead and reach out today because they are the best. What would you tell someone that sees what you're doing and maybe get offended? They say, hey, how could you be doing what you're doing if you could see there's clearly, maybe not all, but there's clearly, Arabs that don't like Jews, and you see these videos of little Muslim kids who are threatening Jews, and it's very scary. What do you tell that person about the work that you're doing and why it's important?
Why it's important? Because the vitality that they have, they're getting from us. The power that they have, they don't really have that much freedom of choice. If the Jewish people are proud Jews, which means that the state of Israel is run, I'm talking about on a public level now, not on what people do in their private homes, as a proud Jewish state, that reflects to all the non-Jews in the world, and especially on the Muslims, because we have a special connection with Yishmael. And if we're going in the right way as Jews, as a nation again, then it has an effect on them. And the Muslims, they respect people who respect their heritage. One of the first questions any Muslim is going to ask you when they start dealing with you or doing business, they're going to want to know what your history is of your family, like where did you come from? They're going to tell you, okay, 400 years ago, we came from this area in Saudi Arabia, we came from Iraq. They all know where they came from. And they know very well what Shabbat is, for example, because in the Quran, there's stories about people who are desecrating the Sabbath and what's going to happen to them according to the Quran. Of course, that's not what we as Jews believe in or preach, but they have their take on things on Jews who are desecrating the day of Sabbath. And when they see a Jew, for example, who's going to have a meeting with them for business on Saturday, they immediately put the two together, and that person's value in their eyes is going down because they see a person who's not faithful to their heritage. And when a lot of managers and CEOs of big companies come to me, they tell me, I want to come to Saudi Arabia, we want to do business over there. And I tell them, listen, there are a few things you're going to have to be very strict about. You can't have any meetings on Saturday. You're going to have to tell them you want kosher food because they know, for example, that you're not supposed to eat a cheeseburger and that you can't eat pork. And even if you're meeting them in New York and they see you ordering something, or not telling them, oh, let's meet in a kosher restaurant, they mean, okay, this person is not true to his religion and values. And again, they don't understand our complex connection with God. Okay, they don't understand what the Jewish people went through in the Holocaust, and many people came out of the Holocaust, and they had different problems with relations with God. And you can't judge these people because these people went through very hard things, which caused them many issues. But for the Muslims, for them, there's certain things which they just don't understand how a person cannot keep to his religion. So they know about kosher food, they know about Shabbat, for example. And these are things. So I tell these managers and CEOs of these big companies, no meetings on Shabbat. You got to tell them you want kosher food. And in the middle of the meeting, tell them you got to go out to pray mincha. But they tell me, we don't know how to pray. I said, doesn't matter. You go out, speak to God. You don't know anybody who has a problem, somebody who's in the hospital. You don't just talk to God, have a conversation. And show them that, you're going out to pray, and this will make, your stock price go up in their eyes. So for a lot of Jewish people, it's very hard to grasp these things, saying, no, we don't do that, we're not religious. They don't listen. They know what a Jew is in their eyes. So go decide for yourself. And when a minister from Israel comes to Saudi Arabia, for example, and a few ministers have come openly because there are many international conventions where they have to invite all the ministers from all the countries in the world which are part of an organization. For example, the World Postal Organization had a conference in Saudi Arabia, and the Ministry of Communications here in Israel is in charge of the post office. So the Minister of Communications, Shlomo Kari, came to Saudi Arabia openly with 10 other Jewish people. And when they saw him coming, davening, taking our Sefer Torah, that became the highlight. If you remember, when he came to Saudi Arabia, the whole world, what were they talking about? not what the deal is that he closed over there, the relationships which he opened or something like that. It was the minyan that he had in the Ritz-Carlton with the Sefer Torah and the lulavim because they came on Sukkot. And at the beginning, they tried to convince them not to come with the lulavim, not the Saudis. Jews tried to tell them, no, you can't. I told them, listen, Shlomo, everybody's going to come with their esrog and lulav, your prayer book, whatever you want, your talesim, you do daf yomi, bring the Gemara. If they ask you any questions, you tell them this is for my personal use, for my prayers, and you'll see. And I was there because I was with them when they came in at the airport. Saw 10 people walking through. Each one had their lulav and their bags and everything, and they went through and everything was fine. They had the minyan over there. And the whole world, that was something they're talking about. How could they pray in Saudi Arabia? How? Because the Muslims in Saudi Arabia, they respect the Jewish people, and they don't have a problem with them praying. If they had a problem, they would shut it down. On the other hand, other ministers who come, they say, no, we don't need kosher food. We don't keep kosher. I told them, that's not the issue. What you do in your private house, or when you're not, representing the state of Israel, that's your business. But when you represent the Jewish state, there are certain things which you have to adhere to, especially when you're dealing with other countries in the Muslim world. For example, when you come as a minister, you have to tell them, listen, we need kosher food for the whole group. So it's still very hard to understand that because they think, no, we're going to become like them, we'll accommodate them. How could we insult our host? No, their idea of hosting is to give you what you need for your religion.
That's so interesting because I know. I forgot who says this pshat, but the name Yishmael, and obviously, their ancestor, the Arab's ancestor, the son of Abraham, his name, there's multiple reasons, but the angel gave Hagar, his mother, that name. She said, oh, you should call him Yishmael. One of the pshatim, I forgot who says it, says that Yishmael, that the Jewish people, this person will help the Jewish people be heard by God. And it's very interesting that you're saying all of this because you're laying down that they want you to be true, a Jewish person, which it's not the same exact religion. There's obviously similarities, but they want you to follow your faith. They don't want you to blend in or not be true. So it's very interesting there.
Well, the name of God is in their mouth because every second word or third word with them is Allah and Allah and Allah and Allah and Allah. So they say God's name a lot, which gives them a lot of metaphysic power, which they don't always use in a good way. But like we see in some places in the world, they say Allah and then they go kill somebody. But the name of Allah is with them. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe mentioned in 1992 that in this day and age, the nations of the world are going to do whatever we need in order to help us keep to our religion and to our fundamentals. And we see it, that when you tell the Saudi government, I saw it myself, they had a big conference over there, the government, and they had 20 Jewish guests that they knew about. And we prepared everything for them in the Ritz-Carlton. We koshered a kitchen over there. They bought new utensils for this whole thing, and they really didn't spare anything to make everything work and to have the best of the best for them. And only about 5 people out of the Jewish group came to eat in the kosher section that we had. So some of them said, oh, no, we're vegetarian. All of a sudden, everybody became vegetarian. And the other part said, no, we want to sit with our Muslim friends. Tell them, come to this dining room. They'll come with you because they have no problem eating kosher. But you see a group of very important people, 20, then only 5 showed up at the kosher venue that they made, and they spent a lot of money on this. They say, wow, Rabbi Herzog was very successful. I said, what do you mean successful? Only 5 people showed up. They said, no, last time we did it, only 1 person came. Now with you managed to attract more. But this is something, for example, that a lot of Jewish people, from different movements in the United States, for example, or even people that come from Islam, they become vegetarian, or they don't this, they don't want to offend them. They don't say, no, they're doing this for you. The concept of hosting with them is just like with the Jewish people. It's a commandment. They see it as a commandment. In Arabic, they say def Allah. A guest is a guest of God. Once he's in your house, in your domain, you have to do everything for him. And even an enemy, you're not allowed to hurt him while he's in your house as a guest. Even if your enemy comes in, like I'm talking about a real enemy that they hate and they would want to kill, somewhere else. Once he's in your tent, that's it. You can't touch him. So these are different things which some very liberal Jews, it's very hard for them to grasp this concept that they did it for you. And if you really want them to respect you, you're going to have to, act like a religious Jew, even though I don't like the word religious so much because it's not really a correct term in Judaism. We don't have like a checklist we check off, okay, you did these 5 things, then you're okay. Because everybody has their standpoint where they have to improve. Everybody has their personal issues which they have to improve. And you can't say that, for example, they make this, they make certain issues. I don't want to mention specifics, but we all know what I'm talking about, which, oh my God, Gewalt, it's terrible, it's toiva and stuff like that. Lashon hara, you're killing somebody. Shabbos is one thing. So everybody has their issue. So for one person, it's, let's say, not checking their messages on Shabbat. For another one, it's not smoking on Shabbat. For another person, it might be they're attracted to a certain food which might not be kosher. So everybody has to deal with their own issues, or, juicy lashon hara. There's no end to what people have to deal with.
It's a very good point. What's your take on what happened with Tzvi Kogan alav shalom, who was in the UAE, and as we know, the UAE is a very safe place. But then you have these people who are just not like all, and they just go ahead and they literally kidnap him and kill him. How do you see that, and especially because you're someone who's likely going to end up in Saudi Arabia? Like, how do you go about that?
I'm not likely to end up in Saudi Arabia. I go to Saudi Arabia. I've traveled all over the country and been to most of the major cities. How do I see it? Tzvi Kogan alav shalom, Hashem yikom damo, may God avenge his blood, was killed. I don't think most of the public, we don't know what the real motive was over there. It might be, Jew hating. It might be, let's say it's Jew hating. We still don't know what the results of the investigation are. It was a tragic, very tragic thing that happened. But with that being said, I think that in the United States and Europe, per capita, more Jews have been hurt and killed than in the UAE. Tri-state area, Florida, Jews, in the past year or two have been killed all over the place. So I wouldn't say that UAE is becoming a dangerous place. It's a very tragic thing that happened, which I think is it's not something which we could say is becoming a phenomenon. Of course, people have to be careful and take care of themselves and protect themselves wherever they are in the world. But I still think that the Middle East currently is a safer place than North America, Europe. Try walking around France the way I'm dressed right now. The Jews over there they'll try to arrest you for walking around like this before anybody tries to mess with you. UK, South Africa, I don't have to go through the whole list. Everybody in their own community could ask themselves, look at the mirror and ask themselves, am I really in a place where if everything boils over, am I going to be safe over here? How many Jews in America are exercising their rights of bearing arms when, at the end of the day, who are you going to rely on?
If you already know about PZ Deals, you know it's the go-to app for saving big on the things you actually want. Phones, sneakers, kitchen gadgets, and more. I love this app. It's completely changed the way that I personally shop. Just tell it what you're looking for. AirPods, a Yeti tumbler, even that Ninja air fryer everyone's raving about. And when the price drops, bing, you get a notification instantly. No more endless searching, no more overpaying, no more countless hours looking online. Last week, I personally grabbed a pair of Adidas Ultra Boosts for under $70, which I'm wearing now. A Keurig for a half price, and even a set of premium luggage for a steal. PZ Deals finds it all. Stop wasting time, stop paying full price, and start saving today. Download PZ Deals now, whether it's iPhone or Android or some other knockoff brand phone that you have. Never pay full price again. The link to download the app is in the show notes. You're going to love it. Now, here's a smart way that you could go about your business. Hiring locally can be costly, with hourly rates often ranging from $20 to $50, not to mention the difficulty of finding someone skilled and immediately available. But what if there was a smarter, more affordable option? Meet Hiring for Less, the ultimate solution for hiring dedicated full-time remote employees from overseas for just $7 an hour or $280 a week. Imagine a 9-to-5 employee in your time zone, fluent in English, and experienced in exactly what you need. Hiring for Less has successfully connected employers with talented professionals in fields such as customer service, real estate, bookkeeping, data entry, cold calling, photo and video editing, architectural design, e-com support, personal assistance, and more specialized roles. Hiring for Less doesn't stop at recruitment. They also help you with training and best practices to seamlessly integrate your new employee into your team. Plus, no contracts, no hidden fees or upfront costs. Just unbeatable value at $7 an hour. Special offer, mention Living L'Chaim to get your first week at 50% off. That's not a joke. Call, text, or WhatsApp 845-682-0990. That's 845-682-0990. Or visit hiringforless.com today or hit the link below. You'll thank us later. Now back to this week's episode. What would you say to someone who's either closed-minded or in their defense, they're like a family member was murdered by someone, screaming, those words that you mentioned before, and then they look at it like, okay, all of a sudden, any Muslim person is automatically, whether it's right or so, but they look at it like they're my enemy. What would you tell that person?
Well, to say that every Muslim person is your enemy is, I think it's not correct. To our great dismay, a lot of Islam has been politicized. You can see the difference between the countries. You have the same religion in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, for example, and look at the results. Jordan, for example, Muslim country. In Jordan, in Egypt especially, you have a religious school, Azahara, which preaches hatred to Jews, hatred to the state of Israel. It's the same religion. But they're taking the religion and changing it for their political use. Because after the Yom Kippur War, they really kicked in. Like for them, so they still think they won the war. And by the way, they don't call the agreement with Israel a peace agreement. They call it the Camp David Agreement. In Israel, people are convincing themselves that it's a peace agreement. But the Egyptians don't look at it as they don't call it a peace agreement. The Green Line. It's an invention of the Israelis. They thought, okay, we're going to make a line, an imaginary line, and then if we make this line, so they'll leave us alone. Whoever's on this side of the line, they'll be left alone, and that side of the line is going to be problematic. But it's something that the Jews in Israel invented, the Israelis, and they don't understand that as long as the Jewish state, as a nation, doesn't say what Rashi said in the first verse of the Torah, that this land is our land by a gift granted to us by God Almighty, and it's not for us to give, it's not for us to take. He gave it to us, and we don't say this openly as a sovereign state, then people are going to feel that they could try and take it away from us. And as long as we don't stand up, again, as a sovereign nation, many people could say different things. But as long as it's like it's going up to the Temple Mount, people go up to the Temple Mount. And I'm not getting to the halachic issue of yes, go, not go. So you go up to the Temple Mount, you have this, religious feeling, connection, connectivity of being where the Beis HaMikdash was. But until the majority of the Jewish people in Israel don't say, we want a temple, we want a Bet Mikdash, and understand that it's the best scenario for us in the world, that it'll be a light for the nations, it'll be Ki Beiti Beit Tefillah Yikareh L'Chol Ha'amim. This is going to be a house of worship for all nations in the world. The light that's going to come out of that place is going to be like no other light. So until we don't bring the people to this situation and level and spiritual level, so you could go up, you'll go up, okay, but you didn't move the Jewish people forward. You did something which is a great feeling. It's, amazing, but again, you didn't look at the macro. Okay, so as long as the Jewish people, don't have a very clear message on what we're doing here in Israel, why we're here in Israel, not just because my father was born here, because my grandfather, my parents came out of choice. They left New York City. They came here by choice, but most of us, we were born here. Or people who've been here for 2, 3, they tell you we've been here for 10, 20 generations, whatever it is. Sometimes they don't realize that, yes, okay, so why are you here? Do you want to go somewhere else? You think it's better somewhere else? This land was given to us by God Almighty. And until that first Rashi in the Torah isn't a message of the people, and it's our job as Jews, and that's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that's what he set out to do once he became the Rebbe, is to bring Jews to a level of awareness that they'll want these things. And how do we do it? By connecting them to actual mitzvot, putting on tefillin, lighting Shabbos candles. We could take somebody to some seminar and speak to them for hours and hours and bring the best people to speak. But if the person didn't do an actual mitzvah, put a mezuzah on their home, a woman going to the mikveh or lighting candles or something like that, it's not going to have the same effect. It's not going to draw down the light and light them up. And they once they understand that if they want to get to that level of happiness and enlightenment, that one mitzvah, lighting candles, it's not only lighting up their own life, it's bringing light to the world, which will then clear their minds and give them clarity. Because I think that a lot of Jews today, they're lacking clarity. If it's people that I know in the States, a lot of them were very disappointed by the results of the elections in the United States, and they're very confused. So today, clarity is very important, and the only way a Jew can reach clarity, it's not by mindfulness, it's not by yoga. These are great things to help around, okay? But a Jewish person, if he doesn't do these practical mitzvot, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, what did he sanctify? He sanctified our body. That's what he sanctified, because with our body, we do the mitzvot. On our arm, we put the tefillin. With your hands, you light the Shabbos candles. So we have to reach out to our brethren. That's what I'm doing in Saudi Arabia, in a place where people think that there's no Judaism. The encounters that I've had in Saudi Arabia have been mind-boggling. The first Yom Kippur that I had, I went to the mall about 3 or 4 hours before Yom Kippur. I'll say, maybe I'll meet somebody else and we'll bring them to the minyan. So I get to the mall. It was about 2:00 in the afternoon on Erev Yom Kippur. I'm telling you, it was like 45 degrees outside. The mall was pretty empty, and because it starts filling up around 5, and I was walking around. I'm saying to myself, "Wow, how am I gonna? I'm gonna find another person here." But something told me, "I just got to just walk. Dress like this, just walk and see what happens. Maybe you'll bump into somebody." And I did a whole round in the mall, walked on every floor, the whole thing, and I walked out. And then I said, "You know what? Go back in." So I go back about maybe 100 feet, walk back in. Then all of a sudden I hear from in the back of me, I hear someone saying, "Rabbi?" And I turn around and I see a Jewish lady with this Saudi guy. So they met in college about 8 years ago in the States, and they're going out. And that's when I realized, wow, look what I have in front of me. So I told her about Yom Kippur. The Saudi guy, of course, told her, "Look, you see, you didn't even know it's Yom Kippur." And this guy knows what Yom Kippur is, the most holy day of the Jewish people, because it's in the Quran about Yom Kippur. So he goes, "Yeah, you didn't even know about Yom Kippur, you see? And here, you have a real rabbi, not like those rabbis that you have in America. The real thing, look, in Saudi Arabia, look what we did for you." So I told her where we're having the minyan, and of course, she showed up for the food at the end of the fast. She didn't come during Fernila, but she showed up for the iftar, the meal. And that's pretty good. So she told me, "Yeah, I met this guy. We're going out seriously." And that's where I realized, wow, I came all this way. I'm having Yom Kippur without, a wonderful chazan and a choir and everything around me like that. But look, this is a mission. And thank God I met them about 2 or 3 weeks after the Chagim again. And, I explained to them that I don't think it would be a good match. And thank God the Saudi guy also came to the conclusion that he has his issues because he still has issues from a prior relationship, and that it's not the best thing for them. And thank God they didn't continue, and she went back to the States. That's just one encounter of how we brought somebody back to that was literally on the verge of assimilation. Now, thank God she's in the States, connected to a Jewish community in the state that she comes from. And she's much more connected now, especially after the encounter that she had in Saudi Arabia, like in the last place in the world, which you would expect to see a rabbi on Erev Yom Kippur, and the whole thing with Yom Kippur and the follow-up that we did with them. So that's just one encounter. But we have a lot of people who weren't affiliated even before they came to Saudi Arabia, and they come and they're eating shmura matzah, and they're having Shabbat programs. And then they're putting on tefillin for the first time, or even some of them lulav and etrog for the first time in their life on Sukkot. So, and these are people that these encounters to us might look like very small things, but they're very fundamental because this is what's reconnecting them, and most of them are like really on the verge of assimilation. And these are people that it adds another element of intriguing, something very intriguing besides being in Saudi Arabia and working in that environment, because Saudi Arabia, as modern as it's becoming, it's still a very Islamic country. Don't have any mistake about that. They're not westernizing, they're modernizing, but they're not westernizing. So, women might be driving everything, but the family unit, it's very clear where everybody's positioned. Friday, most of the supermarkets are closed much of the day up until 5 o'clock, maybe for like an hour or two in the morning. They're open for people who need some basic groceries. Major office areas Friday, nobody's there. Nobody's going to open their office on Friday. Malls are empty till about 4 or 5 in the afternoon until they go through their whole Friday process of going to the mosque, having a family meal. So you're still in a very Muslim country. And even though there's no religious police enforcing a lot of these things, most Saudi women still choose to dress in a very traditional, modest way. But the Jews that I run into in Saudi Arabia is very, very intriguing.
This is fascinating, and I probably could talk to you for another like hour or two with just these stories. What's your final message for someone listening? And I particularly think this episode we're going to get people that are Orthodox Jews. We're going to get Jews that are maybe distant from their heritage, and we're also going to have non-Jews, maybe whether they're Muslim or Christian. What would your message be? What final message would you want them all to hear?
Well, I tell my Jewish brethren, first of all, no matter what your affiliation is or what your past is to find the true connection to our Torah, to our heritage, and to connect. And to connect in a way which nobody's forcing you, nobody's trying to force anything upon you, in a true way, which, first of all, you have the right to know what your heritage is. A lot of people today don't even know about the holidays, what the elements of the holidays are. To connect in a very true and candid way, with nobody forcing them, and to understand more about this history that we have. We're a nation that we started off from Adam and Eve, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. We have history and heritage like no other nation in the world. And you have to be proud of that. And being proud of it is being different. A lot of times people say, okay, what are the similarities between Jews and Muslims? I told them, I don't look for similarities. We're very different people. And it's not something bad that we're different. On the contrary, they have their strong points. We have our strong points. But if we learn to work together and live side by side, we could create a third product, which is a very amazing product. But as Jews, I say again, if we're proud of who we are and we don't deny who we are and we really connect to who we are and what we are and to God, then the world will see that and it'll reflect on the world and it'll light the world up, because every single thing that one Jew does lights up the world. Every mother and girl that's lighting a Shabbat candle, they're not only bringing light into their own home, they're bringing light to the world. And that's a light that's needed. It's something which is needed. Just like every person that's in this world, God brought us here, every one of us, no matter what we're doing. He brought us here because we have something specific which only you can do, no matter what you're doing. Like people say, wow, you're doing something so amazing. I tell them, listen, I do what I know how to do. I learned how to deal with Arabs, how to deal with Muslims. I, give advice to the government on this, on how the social systems work over there. For example, when there's a conflict within a tribe, I know the dynamics within the Muslim culture, and the different steps of how things get solved and everything like that. But at the end of the day, we have to be connected to who we are, and that will reflect on the whole world. And that will bring peace and light to the world, because look what happened all over the world. In Columbia University, which was, I think, the highlight of the anti-Israel activities which we had in the past year and a half. It's a place which is supposed to be a place of enlightenment, a place of knowledge, of scholars, And look what they did. They went and justified and took side with the Hamas. And this is supposed to be a place of enlightenment. And look at what they reached. And we have to realize that sometimes we don't understand why we were commanded to do something. But if we remind ourselves that it's because God commanded us, because if we're working only with our minds could take us to very dangerous places. Look what happened in Nazi Germany. And when a person is only working with his mind and not connecting to something which is eternal, that's why this week's portion of the Torah, Mishpatim, it starts with Ve'ele HaMishpatim. What's the Ve? And that means that there was something before. Usually when we say, I went to my parents' house, and then from there I went to the synagogue. But why does it start with and? These are the laws of this, because it's to remind us that it didn't start with our brain. Everything is connected to Sinai. And if we understand the logic between something like helping orphans or widows or something like that, okay, great, you understand. But what happens when you reach something that you don't understand? If you don't stop and say, okay, why? And that's one of the things that I work with Muslims. I ask them, okay, why don't you steal? It's a Noahide law. You're not allowed to steal. Why don't you steal? So they say, okay, it's not moral. I didn't work for it. I say, you don't steal because God commanded you he gave the message to Nabi Musa. They call him the prophet Moshe. Through the Torah, that you're not allowed to steal. That's the reason why you don't steal. Because, okay, you understand why it's not good to steal. But let's say it's something else which you don't understand, so that's it. So it's connecting, and sometimes we have to turn off our mind and realize that we're connected to God, and we do what His commandments are, even though sometimes we don't understand. And that's the difference between the Jewish people and other nations of the world that went through different stages of enlightenment and knowledge and everything like that, but at the end, they ran themselves into the ground. If it's what we saw in the last century in Europe, of Nazi Germany, we see it happening now. We see, what was acceptable at the end of World War II in the United States, what was considered moral, today, the mind went in a totally different way. What America was like in 1948, at the end of the Second World War, today, at that time, if abortion was a big no-no, today it became a very legitimate way in certain states and circles of birth control. And same country, same people, same universities, but it's basically they're using their mind. They're using their cold secha. And if you're not connected to something that's eternal, and we, thank God, have the Torah. It's the first set of laws that was given from God to the world, which is a foundation. The 10 Commandments are a foundation to every other system of justice in the world. So as Jews, getting back to what you asked me, as Jews, we have to connect. And connect means doing mitzvot, doing practical things, not only staying on a mental level, it's looking to see how, yes, you can do practical commandments and mitzvot. Every time you put a coin into charity or write out a check to charity, you're doing something like that, and you're connecting.
Incredible. Rabbi Herzog, thank you so much for this interview, and thank you for the important work that you're doing, something that I don't think many are doing, and specifically what you're doing. I don't think anyone else is doing specifically exactly what you're doing. So thank you for that, and thank you for this conversation.
You're welcome, and God bless you all.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I finally found a guest whose beard is a little bigger than mine, and my beard's been getting out of control. I saw some love last time in the YouTube comments about my beard. So if you love my beard, you hate my beard, let me know. It's all good. You could hate on my beard if you don't like it. And we recently realized that your feedback in the comments shape what and who we bring on. So tell us if you like Rabbi Herzog's approach. What's been your experience with our Muslim cousins? Good, bad? We want to hear it. Just let us know about your experience. This is your sign also to hit the links and reach out to our sponsors, whether it's BitBean, Hiring for Less, PZ Deals, or Wheels to Lease. All great companies, all great people, and great service. Now, Rabbi Herzog's journey shows us that the real power to change the world lies in genuine curiosity and that courage to reach out. Understanding others doesn't mean agreeing with them. It means valuing their stories, their faith, and their perspective. This week, I have a little test for you. Try connecting with someone different from you. Maybe it's a Muslim colleague, a neighbor who practices a different faith, or even someone within our own community, like a yeshivish person reaching out to someone who's modern Orthodox, or vice versa. Invite them for a coffee, ask about their story, and really listen. you might discover that the bridges we need to build aren't as far as they all seem. Remember, inspiration is everywhere. L'chaim. Living L'chaim.